So I'm quite surprised that there aren't a lot more people talking about Returnal, an upcoming PS5 exclusive that is going to release later this month on April 30th. So just a few more days up until then, but everything I've seen up until now looks really awesome, very fast-paced and very difficult, which if you're like me and enjoy a challenge, you're going to love quite a bit. And this is also kind of like one of the first games of its type, so to say, because we had roguelike games in the past, like a ton of them ever since the 90s and whatnot, but this is the first AAA roguelike that we get, at the very least of this caliber, and also a next gen exclusive. So we're gonna talk about that in this video, what you should expect from it and why this might be a really awesome new game that you might be able to play. So let's jump into all of that. Now I know what you're thinking next, what the heck is even Returnal, or you already saw it but are still not fully yet caught on with the details. Well, if third-person shooter psychological horror is the first thing that comes into your mind, then that's pretty close to what Returnal is, but I would also add that small and very important part, which is the roguelike aspect of it, since this was created by Housemarque, a developer and a studio that is specifically known for creating tons of really awesome roguelikes in the past. Now that bit right there is really important, because one of the big staples for roguelikes is the fact that when your character dies, it essentially dies and it has to begin from the very start, and you also lose all of your progress. Though I will make a mention here, in the case of Returnal, you don't literally lose everything and have to start the game from the very beginning. You do keep some of the progress and some of the unlocks, but you lose most of the other stuff like the upgrades, the equipables, and so on and so forth. I will also mention that this perfectly blends with the narrative of the game, and it makes sense from a story point of view, because you're essentially stuck in a time loop, as we will explain in just a little bit, and even the process of you dying in the game is actually going to play a role into that narrative, but that's going to make a lot more sense once you get to play the game. Now in Returnal, you take the role of Celine, a deep space pilot slash astronaut who crashed with her spaceship on Atropos, a mysterious planet where she seems to be stuck in a time loop. And this is the time loop I was talking about. Essentially, every time you die, you get sent back at the beginning of the level back to your ship, and you have to start everything from there with minimal of your progress being saved. It's almost always going to be only the permanent unlocks that you find at certain points in the story, but pretty much everything else is gone, including your weapons, your upgrades, your consumables. They are gone and have to be taken again. A little bit like Dark Souls, but not really, because you can't take them back like in Dark Souls. They are gone and you have to recollect them again. It's not just that changes. It's not just the fact that you're sent back and have to repeat the same level that changes. It's also the fact that the world around you changes. That's because of the procedural generation of any roguelike game out there, where the levels are actually procedurally generated, which is also the case for Returnal. So even though you might still be in the exact same level, like for example the first forest area, you're going to see the layout different every single time, because it's being rearranged by that procedural nature of the game, which actually also plays a gameplay role, as in it keeps things fresh, or at least a little bit fresher than it would be if you were to repeat the exact same layout every single time. So I hope it makes sense, but it's not that you're always going to have to start from the very beginning. Obviously there are checkpoints along the way, obviously you will progress through the game, there's multiple biomes in which you're going to be able to play with. So far we've seen about a handful of these, some of them from the gameplay previews, some of them we saw them in the previous trailers and gameplay videos, and they look pretty interesting. I'm not gonna lie, I really like these environments. They seem to fully take advantage of the next generation graphics, and it's not just that, the entire game was specifically built from the ground up for the next generation. This is why the movement in this game feels so fluid and fast. This is why you're going to be encouraged to play as fast and be as nimble as possible, because you're going to have a ton of incoming attacks at you at every single step of the way. Also, the loading times in between levels are going to be pretty much lightning speed. When you open up a door and go into the next area, it's going to load up pretty much instantaneously, so it helps a lot with that. But by far the craziest are going to be those particles. Now the game is going to throw you a ton of these at every single moment, every single time you're in combat. Enemies will use their own types of attacks attacks will constantly try to like dive you and bomb you and overwhelm you with all of these particles happening at the same time on the screen. Again, another staple of the roguelikes, but this time around it's interesting to see it from a third-person perspective, because you don't just have to worry about these from you know, having them come from left, right, top, center or bottom. You have them pretty much from all of the axes. You have them from beneath, from above, at an angle. You're going to be overwhelmed and you're going to have to stay on your toes, which is where the suit is going to help you. You're going to be able to use your thrusters to jet around, to like dodge everything incoming, and then immediately come in with an attack and take them down. Now this isn't just about you being like super good and playing the game well and not making any mistakes. It also helps that there's a really robust upgrade system. You're going to be able to collect weapons, upgrades, make your character better and better prepare for these fights. So you're going to discover all kinds of weapons. I believe there's like 10 types of weapons right now in the game, from like your pistols, shotguns, carbines. There's even like hollow seekers and so on and so forth, and they will all have their own strengths and unique capabilities. And most important, all the weapons in Returnal will also have alternate firing modes, which essentially you can activate by holding down the shoot button all the way down. And it's pretty interesting because it gives you certain powerful abilities, like maybe a full laser beam that you can use from pretty far away and deal way more damage, or an arc lightning to zap enemies in like your close range. Really interesting ones, and there's a lot more on top. But of course it doesn't just stop there. There's multiple other upgrades you can apply to your character. Obviously, when you kill enemies, there's going to be a ton of resources that you're going to have to collect and invest into unlocking certain parts of your build or your character to make them that much stronger or survive for longer. Now here is where it kicks in with the roguelike element. Most of these you will lose on every cycle. Every time you die and get to start at the beginning of your ship, you're going to lose most of your stuff. Like for example, the weapon that you just got, with the exception of the pistol, you're going to be able to still start with the pistol, and you're going to be able to like regain these weapons fairly easily back, as they do drop from the enemies. But also the consumables, they are gone. You have to recollect them again, and everything else in between, which also brings us to that high risk, high reward kind of gameplay that exists in the game. It's also further augmented by the adrenaline system. The more you kill enemies and are active in combat, the more you increase your damage, and you're going to be able to take down enemies that much faster. But this also means that you might run at a risk of also getting downed yourself and lose everything and start from the very beginning. As I've said, not all progress is lost. This also means that some of the permanent changes, like some of the permanent unlocks, like tools and some other stuff in there too, will still be kept, so that you don't have to literally take everything from the very beginning. But everything else, like the consumables, as I've said, even more so the weapons that you just unlocked, like maybe you just got a carbine or whatever, yeah, they're gonna be gone, and you have to start with your pistol once again and reacquire them. Now fortunately enough, as I've said, you don't literally lose everything. Their motto is pretty much reset, not restart. So even though some of the upgrades and like the weapons that you got are going to be left behind, some of the other upgrades and powerful effects are still going to be kept, and you're going to be able to continue with them. So it's not that punishing. But otherwise, you're going to be able to easily get weapons back. You're going to constantly be bombarded by these, because you can get them from enemies as drops, find them in chests, be rewarded when you're interacting with certain environmental pieces. This also brings us to the online component of it, though I wouldn't say that it's like fully online or whatever. It's kind of like in Dark Souls again, where you can find corpses of other players in the game. If you interact with them, you kind of have a couple of options, either to just extract whatever they have to give you, or to kind of avenge them, which in this case is going to give you the possibility of fighting with a certain powerful enemy, but also get a really cool reward in the process. And the game is actually going to be filled with secrets and areas to collect and explore. You're going to want to actually actively take part in these, as they will give you further rewards that will make your build that much better. Despite the fact that some of them might be lost, you will still want them for the challenges ahead, especially if you do manage to not die and progress a significant part forward. So it looks overall amazing, like the aesthetic of it, I really like it, the fast-paced combat, I really like it. The only problem that I'm seeing is that this is going to be a $70 game right now, which might be a price tag that a lot of people are not willing to go past, despite the fact that the game looks really incredible. Now, personally, this could go either way. This could either become a classic, like for example Dark Souls, like being the first AAA roguelike of its type. It might just be that. So far so good, it looks really amazing, the reception has been extremely positive, and it also looks really amazing, and it comes from a studio that has a track record in creating really amazing game, though I will mention that this is their first AAA game as well. But yeah, otherwise this is pretty much it, all I had to say about Returnal. So far it looks really amazing. I am going to dedicate a series to it, as it does hold quite a lot of the things that I do love about these types of games, and specifically I love that combat and I love that challenge, but most important I love the secrets and the things that you can uncover in this game. This is it though for now. I'm gonna keep you guys at it with more Returnal in the future, so if you want to stay up to date with that, definitely make sure you leave a like, subscribe and activate that notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next one.